So, welcome to the housephotum.com podcast. It's a bright, actually it's a dreary Monday morning, early 7:30 a.m., cloudy, really chilly. So, I want to talk about something that most of you guys may not be aware of. You may not, who knows. Nobody's in your private lives. But a couple days ago, I ran across a post. You know, I'm one of those people who just browse. And if something piques my interest, I will actually click on the post that somebody else posted. You know, like they share a post or a group, you know. So I happened to click on a post. It was about polygamy. So just to give you some insight, polygamy or plural marriages is when a person has multiple spouses. So that's what polygamy is, a person with multiple spouses at the same time, where polygamy can be broken down into two different types. There's either polygyny, that's polygyny, when a man has multiple wives. And then there's polyandry, where the wife has multiple husbands at the same time. So we're going to talk about polygamy, and which is part of a broader term called poly. Poly means many. But most of the time when you hear somebody use the word poly, they are really referring to polyamory. It's kind of like how they hijacked the term poly. Poly just means many. But if you hear somebody say, I'm poly, most likely they mean polyamory. So poly means many, amory, love, means many loves. And that polyamory could be in so many different dynamics. Unlike polygamy, polyamory does not require the marriage aspect. It can have an aspect of marriage, but it doesn't require it. So polyamory could be in a lot of different models. It could be, you know, wives, girlfriends, you know, it could be a married couple that both of them have a girlfriend or a boyfriend, or the husband could have a girlfriend and the wife could have a boyfriend, or it could be groups where they actually have a close relationship between groups. I've seen that dynamic, not in person, but I've seen that dynamic, you know, on media and just discussions and stuff like that. So just get that idea. Polyamory is multiple or many loves. Okay. So for this discussion, the person posted a post within this group that said, how many of you would participate in a poly relationship? And then I believe it was actually polyamorous relationship or other poly situations. So it was specifically asking for polyamorous relationships or polygamy, polyandry, polygyny, however you want to, you know, divide it up. So I was kind of taken back a little bit, and not much surprises me, but I was kind of taken back at the more so from the women and the men. You know, most people think the men would be all in. Oh, let's jump in there. You know, I have many women, and you know, it was nothing like that. It was more so it was more men that said they would not like to be in a poly relationship, whether it be polyamory or polygamy. Of course, there was men that said, yes, I've been, you know, poly for most of my life, or for the past 17 or umpteen years. That's the only way for them. Then within that dynamic, it was some that, obviously who was open to polygamous relationships, preferred man with multiple wives. So this is historically, culturally, religiously is the most common, polygyny, man with multiple wives. That has been ingrained in human development since the beginning of time. Polyandry has in some form or fashion in different places, but more or less polygyny is the common, way of practicing marriage. So there was one guy, this is what shocked me about the guys. There was one guy who said he was willing to participate in a polyandry situation where, he would come in in a couple and they would just share the same woman. I thought that was pretty odd because not too many guys that I know that, would willingly share the same woman. Now, there's guys that do it, but they're usually doing it by unlawful taking or, on a sneak tip, jumping in somebody else's relationship at the same time, where the other person may or may not know, but it's not sanctioned. These type of situations, one of the things that you have to have is consent. That's what makes it polyamorous or polygamous is consent. All parties must be consenting to be in it. And for the most part, they know that's the situation they're in. They may not know the other person. I've heard of relationships where husband and wife have a girlfriend or boyfriend, and the couple knows that they have that situation. They allow it, but they don't want to know who the other person is. Okay, so that's a big difference. But this was a situation where the guy actually was like, "Hey, I like to have that situation." Now, here's the shocking part. On the women's side, I was surprised at how many women, and it may outnumber the women who said no to poly, but I was surprised at the number of women who were open to it, and not only open to it, but the type of situation that they would be in. Now, one thing to point out, and this is very important, I think 99% of the people involved in this discussion are African-American, Black, and from the United States. Okay, that makes a big difference because obviously, United States have their own thing going on when it comes to relationships. So with the women, quite a few women said they would participate in a poly relationship, whether it be polygamy, polyandry, polygyny, or polyamory. Okay, so one particular woman said, "Yes, that's the idea. I would love to be in a poly relationship with, two guys." It was actually quite a few. One said it was, she would have 2 or 3 guys, and obviously they would all have to be consenting to be in that situation for it to fit the category. But that's something that she would like. And I saw a few comments in there that said that the majority of the people who wanted to not the women, not people, but the women who wanted multiple spouses or polyamory with multiple, male lovers, was that, hey, one person, I've never had a man or one man that can satisfy all my needs. So why not have 2 or 3 or 4, however many they decide? So I was like, I look at everything. I try to keep an open mind about everything. But I can be honest with myself and say that was pretty nasty to me. That's like everybody, eating from the same bowl and putting their food back into the same bowl, So that's me. There was a few women that decided that they would like polygyny. Hey, there's some benefits to it. So we're going to talk about some of the benefits and the downfalls of each one of them in the next segment. This one, I just want to talk about what they are and some of the things that they discussed. Now, I think in the United States, with the complexities of relationships and, maybe it's the new age, we don't have traditional roles for the most part, which may be a problem. We'll talk about that later. We have a near 60% divorce rate here in the United States. And I think a lot of people look for things to, get them back on track as far as relationships goes. They look for things to fix their relationships. So this is some of the conversation that I've had in different circles in regards to poly relationships, whether it be polygamy or polyamory. Some people like polyamory because I think they base it more on the physical. From what I'm getting, that they had more motivation to be in the polyamory because of the sexual nature of polyamory. Not so much building an intimate, emotional relationship, but the opportunity to have variety and choice. So, my thing with that is, why be in a relationship? Why don't you, just do your own thing and don't commit to anybody, So, but people have their reasons. So going back to the topic again, poly relationships. It was shocking to me that, that there was that many women that was open to the idea of having multiple spouses. And most of the vast majority of women that I know, and maybe they're not being open enough or honest enough, but the vast majority of women I know, when it comes to love, we're not talking about sex. That's what it seemed like they were more, basing everything on sex and fulfilling a sexual desire or whatever. That was in the polyamory responses. But most women that I know actually tend to stick to one person. They put their all in one person. If they have an emotional attachment to a person, it's usually one man. That's what it is. It's usually one man. And they give their mind, body, soul to that one person. So a lot of them reject the idea of having multiple guys. Some say they can't even deal with one guy, and probably couldn't deal with two, or it just brings more problems. So, now, on the other hand, guys are quick to say, not all, I would say the vast majority were quick to say, yes, I could have two women. And we're not talking about in a sexual aspect. And we're talking about in, giving yourself emotionally too. Can you be emotionally attached to more than one person at the same time? Can you love more than one person? And the vast majority of men, and I don't know the exact, it's not a scientific calculation or anything like that, but if I had to ask, or I had to guess what the percentage was based on my experience and, discussion, I would say it's probably 95%. 95%. And maybe higher if you consider the fact that some don't want to deal with that many women because of the headaches. So, in segment 2, we're going to talk about the pros and cons of each, and maybe give you some real life examples from people who are actually participating in it. So stay tuned for episode number 2. We'll get back to you. houseofodom.com.